The Stop and Shop project, Old South Road.
Stop and Shop project, the new,
Yep.
right,
the
model,
flipping, the building
the
flip.
issue of the access to the loading docks and the turning,
Yep.
the truck turning, and so forth.
You may have, if you watch the meetings on TV, I try to explain these things from a real practical point of view. If we were designing what we already have now, everybody'd be complaining about how the trucks can't see pulling out of the back of the finest Stop and Shop building. Worked for 40 years. It's a bad, you cannot see pulling semis out of there, but it's worked. This plan on paper looks kind of sketchy, but it will work. It's just a different plan than, you know what I mean? Anything new raises all sorts of questions, especially during a public hearing process. Really gets everybody going because they have the ability to voice their opinion and complain and write letters and speak, etc. But in the end, the fire department is not going to be there. I mean, you have to plan for tomorrow. You can't plan for right now. If you know that that fire station is going to be gone in 5 years, let's just say 5 years, then the alternative to this loading dock thing has a solution later, okay, behind the building.
But is the Stop and Shop at that point going to make the kind of
well,
investment?
we've already talked to them about that. They'll definitely be re-examined at the time. But if the fire station was built in the last 5 years and it was brand new and it wasn't going anywhere, then it would be a different process. You know what I'm saying?
What do you think is going to end up with the fire station?
I think it's going to be at 4 fairgrounds. I mean, that makes the most sense. I mean, you know, there's going to be improvements to the rotary. I mean, the rotary is not a roundabout. Now that we know what a roundabout works, how it works, now we know that the rotary is not a roundabout.
Right.
And at the time when we tried to fix it a few years back, nobody would have accepted that plan because nobody knew the difference. Now everybody knows. And as far as like the water company thing, I mean, all that stuff is going to take shape on its own. But I think that 4 fairgrounds is the most logical thing. I mean, it's already set up for it. We paid for the land. We bought all this land for that reason. So
part of it. That was one of the reasons.
Well, you know what I'm saying. I mean, we bought the land because it was available and it made sense. So
on Old South Road, I guess whatever traffic remediation there is going to be the result of what the ultimate use is for the commercial development of the Valero and Milwaukee properties. And that, as I understand it, the way that works is that the developer will come in with a plan, which you the planning board.
You talking about the freeze plan that's in the paper, or are you talking about
just conceptually? I'm talking about conceptually.
Okay.
The developer comes in with a plan, and basically he or she is then told whether it's a good plan or a bad plan, how it's got to be changed.
It comes out the preliminary plan, and they meet with staff as well before it even gets to that stage. And that's what's good about the planning department now with Andrew and Leslie. I mean, we have such an open door with all these people. It's just like with Stop and Shop, how much they've done for the community and what they're going to be doing for the Boys and Girls Club with that Craig property. These are things that weren't able to happen 20 years ago or 10 years ago. I mean, this is why it's so vital to work with the applicants way before these things come to fruition, because you're getting all the initial problems off the table. So you don't have these things I mean, you start a public hearing like you've never met them before. That's ugly, especially with a big project. And that's why it's so nice to be able to work with these people now, because it's better for the public. The product at the end, you have people that you can work with, and people get to know them in a lot of cases, and it's just better for us because we don't have much land left in.
That's true.
You know, and these projects are going to keep happening, but at the same time, we're running out of, I guess I would say, places to have these things. You know, you don't want, like the Craig property, I didn't mean to bring that up off the cuff like that. I didn't even mention that to you yet, but we got them to not propose the store there. We just basically told them, you're not putting the store there. And we did, because it's wrong. I mean, you imagine a gigantic store on the top of that property? I mean, It's just ridiculous.
This is
You know
the
what I mean?
property between
Boys and-
Sparks
yeah.
and Pleasant, next to the Boys and Girls
Yeah,
Club.
that's a sacred piece of property. It is privately owned. Now, it's going to get developed, but it's going to get developed with Nantucket best interest that possible. And that has happened. They've met with all the people over there. These are really important things for us, that this stuff happens the way it needs to happen. So, anyway,
One of the things
back to Old South Road.
No, before we get back to Old South
Okay.
Road, although it leads in, one of the things that is becoming more and more of an issue here is, quote, affordable, and I don't mean that in the legal
Yeah.
sense. I mean actually affordable rental housing.
Yeah.
You know, I've gotten calls this spring from people who've been on the island before, who
Yeah.
have connections, who can't find places to live,
Yeah.
to rent for the summer or even for a year. I actually asked Mr. Paston when he was here before whether it was financially feasible to do some kind of apartment complex.
Condos.
No,
Or-
not.
well,
I'm talking about rental housing.
Yeah.
I'm talking about rental housing. The problem is the zoning basically doesn't allow it at this point.
The new zoning that we put in at town meeting, if it passes, won't. But the current zoning does. If they freeze, and they're going to file a freeze plan, which they should, which everybody has to do that. When you have a potential, when you have RC2, you need to file a freeze plan if you're gonna, if everything isn't going exactly the way you want. You have to be able to protect your rights. And that's one thing that's good about Massachusetts. It does a lot of land right protection.
But the point is that from a planning perspective at this point,
Yep.
there doesn't seem to be any sense of urgency on.
Well, I mean, we prove second dwellings every day. I mean, you have to remember that.
Yeah, but what's happening is the second dwellings are being taken off the year-round market, so because they think they can make more money renting
The summer. Well, you're right. I mean,
And could you combine it, for example, with tax abatements or some sort of?
I think that there'll be some solutions. The covenant lot thing is starting to bubble up a little bit, and there'll probably be some adjustments to that as now it's starting to get used, the covenant lot issue.
Right.
In fact, the public now understands it a little more than they did, because when it first started to, when that got passed, I don't know how many years ago, it never got used. Nobody was doing it. And then all of a sudden, in the last year, there's been about a half a dozen applications for covenant lots, which basically carves out the secondary lot.
But still, somebody has to buy it.
Yeah, that's right.
Somebody has to come up with a down payment.
I understand, but that's one solution. I know that's a very small solution. I think that there's going to end up being some changes in some of the existing zoning districts to allow possibly apartments and a second dwelling. Like right now, you can't have a garage apartment
Right.
and a second dwelling on the same lot. Can't do that. The garage can be there, but as a garage, it can't be a
Right. You can't have a stove.
That's right. I know you can have a stove. Here we go with the whole studio thing, right? But that is something that, to me, should be changed. I mean, that's just my personal opinion. There's no real. It doesn't really change the property look, in the density and the ground cover. You got to let people make money on their property. Maybe something that restricts them from renting it in the summer. There's a lot of things that could be done to improve
Who's going to
this.
take the leadership role in this? Because it's important. It's critical.
Some people say we don't need any more. I mean, I have.
Well, you always have somebody.
I understand. Well, there's a lot of people that think we are making our population too big, and now the schools have to be enlarged. I mean, there's a lot of different arguments with this issue. We're the build it, they will come sort of thing. But really, it's just a shift, as you said, in how people rent their properties. I mean, the seasonal rental pays for a lot more than a year-round rental does.
That's right.
And also, the real estate agents, it's easy to rent them because there's so many people want to come here for a couple of weeks. I mean, Nantucket's an attractive place, and that's what's paying all the bills. So it's complicated.
It's very complicated.
I mean, the one thing that does disturb me, though, this is new, is people, I guess I would say people that would normally buy out of town, is that okay to say, now are buying houses on Appleton Road for a seasonal house. That's unusual. That's new. I haven't seen that before. But I think there's median income people from off island that are not rich, but they have enough money to buy a house in Nantucket safe for $1 million, $800,000, and they have a summer place and they have their dirt on Nantucket, as I say.
Right.
And the taxes are low, even for a seasonal tax rate, where they can buy it. I think that that's what's happening. I have friends that come here in the summer that I know that want to buy a house. They haven't done it, few that I know, but they're looking at that.
Right.
And I think that that's what's happened. So it's not the millionaires are buying them, but the people that can afford it.
It takes them off the market for
us.
That's the point.
And then I know. It's, look, changing, this is another thing. Now, this is a dirty word, down zoning. We've got a lot of zoning districts that are Lug 2. This should be R40 at least. We have zoning districts that are Lug 1 that should be Lug 2, like out in Pulpus.
Right.
And in Squam, there's some low density. It's crazy. We're slowly fixing some of this stuff, but there's resistance to down zoning as if down zoning is bad. But in reality, like in the South Shore Road area or in some of the other areas in Myacomet, Bartlett Road, for example, we did the opposite on the zoning. It's all RC2 now. We've changed it. So we have areas that need to be fixed. Like a good example is on Fairgrounds Road on the forest side. That was Lug 2, and the other side was R10. Does that make any sense? I mean,
Probably
these
not.
are the places. But that adds housing the natural way, the normal growth way.
But it doesn't. I mean, there's a whole segment, in my view. We can talk again about this.
I mean, it's different to having a big development versus just natural growth.
Right.
Okay? You're going to see some housing at Miles Reese's on Surfside Road. That's all going to be residential. That's going to be fairly dense. That will be some units there. I mean, it's tough. I mean, Augie's property is going to eventually be housing at some point. I mean, there's a lot of potential housing out there. I mean, you have the coming one, the Sachem's Path project is going to be done. I mean, how much can we do, Dan? 56% of the island is unbuildable, and we just took land off the tax rolls on Cato Lane. I mean, that's another topic.
Yeah,
Egan property should not be taken off the tax rolls.
The question is the type of housing necessarily.
I understand, but housing in Mid-Island is, I would say, is the housing we need, regardless of whether it's high end or not.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Sort of.
Well, the land that's near sewer, that has sewer and water, is, to me, is the housing we should have.
Well, that's certainly true. I agree.
Okay.
With you. Yeah.
So anyway,
We've got to wrap up here.
What else you want?
Any last words?
Geez, I hope it's a good summer. Is winter over? What is going on?
I hope so.
This is terrible, Dan.
It's awful.
This has been a rough winter. It's the harbor didn't freeze, but boy, I'll tell you what, it was colder than the years that it did over a sustained period of time.
It's been brutal.
Yeah.
NatLowell, thank you
Take care,
so
Dan.
much.
Nice to talk to you.